We open with a foreshadowing shot of Gordon walking through the steam outside the restaurant. Samy puts on his best smile and greets Chef Ramsay with open arms. The first thing that catches his eye is the nice desserts they have at the front counter, all made by Amy. When Amy tells Gordon that she makes all the desserts herself and is the head chef, he tells Samy that he got lucky. To his surprise, the kitchen is clean and well organized to the point where he calls it a pleasure. While discussing how Samy was a developer who built houses before investing in Amy, Gordon interrupts them to say the dessert is delicious. Chef Ramsay is ready to try the food. He finds out that his server has been working there for a month and a half and that she doesn't know if the tips are good or not because she doesn't get to keep them.
Say that again?
He tells her that she is probably the only server in the country who doesn't get tips. It gets worse because we find out that the tips are actually going to Samy. When Gordon confronts Samy about not tipping his staff, Samy says that when he has someone who can do their job without him having to interfere, then they can have the whole tips to themselves. He claims he does most of the work and asks Gordon if he watched him take 3 orders and send them to the kitchen. Gordon reminds him that he is the owner, meaning he gets the profits from the sales, whereas the servers do not. He again says he does most of the work. Seeing the conversation going nowhere productive, Chef Ramsay tells Samy he is ready to order and proceeds to tell him what he would like to try. Gordon orders the gnocchi, asking if it was made fresh. Samy says it usually is, but not today, because they didn't have time to make it, which means they have a bag for the days they don't have time, or they never make them fresh and they are always bought this way. Why would they have them if they weren't planning to use them? He decides to go with the ravioli without knowing if it was homemade or not, since Samy made it seem they had fresh pasta, but not fresh gnocchi. Gordon tells the camera that the story is becoming a little clearer. He's only just begun. The chef's order is in the kitchen and Amy is sure that once Gordon tastes her food, he will be able to tell that
this is what God wants me to do.
When Gordon hears a doorbell going off every few minutes, he asks the server what it's for. You might think it would be used by the kitchen to let the servers know the food is ready. Not this one. It's actually to let the kitchen staff know there are dirty dishes out there so they can go get them. Ramsay wonders why the servers can't just take them back and says it's the first time a dishwasher has ever used a doorbell. While waiting for his food, Chef Ramsay notices that Samy is the only one using the system to send orders to the kitchen. When Gordon asks Samy why he doesn't train servers on the system so he is free to do other tasks, he says he will show them when the time comes, so never. Chef Ramsay asks the server if she's used a point-of-sale system in the past and how many jobs she's had. She says she's used systems at every other job she's had, which was a lot. You can tell Samy doesn't like this conversation. He just doesn't want to share the tips. The conversation is cut short when the pizza arrives. Gordon cuts up the pizza as he likes to dissect it to get a good look inside before tasting it. So far, he says it's not crispy. He gives it a taste, saying it is very sweet, then pokes it a few times and comes to the conclusion that after all this time he spent waiting, it turns out
My dough's raw.
Samy tells Gordon that he doesn't know why it would come out that way today, since people always love the pizza, contrary to what we witnessed the previous evening. Gordon proceeds to tell Samy that the pizza is raw, soggy, wet, and too sweet in general. Samy gives it a poke himself, but doesn't say much about it. Gordon asks him to take the pizza back to Amy, thinking he would show her the raw dough. Samy says, of course. In reality, he handed the pizza to one of the servers, who put it with the rest of the dirty dishes. Amy asks Samy for Gordon's feedback, but he doesn't give it to her. Instead, he tells her not to worry about it because everything is okay. Samy explains that Amy doesn't take criticism well, and that if he were to tell her what Gordon said, she would be shaking and say,
"That's it, I'm leaving."
Samy tells Chef Ramsay that he didn't even tell his wife about the pizza because she would get nervous. Gordon asks if he's scared of telling his wife the truth. Samy suggests Gordon go back and tell Amy about the raw dough. Ramsay says he just wants her to know so that she has a chance to change the next one. Ramsay tells Samy he's been waiting for 75 minutes and has only tried the undercooked pizza, and that he's starving. Samy tells him he will let Amy know that he is starving and she will get it out quickly. When the burger arrives, Gordon lists off the ingredients and gives it the sniff test. The first issue is the amount of butter on the bun. The burger isn't medium rare as he usually orders it, and when he tries to take a bite, it starts dripping all over the plate. He comes to the conclusion that it is unnecessarily complicated and
That is one burger.
the food goes into the garbage without Amy seeing it again. Gordon receives the may or may not be freshly made ravioli and asks the server how the salmon burger he ordered is coming along. She makes the mistake of asking Amy how much longer for the salmon burger. Amy says it's on its way. She doesn't have to tell them it needs to go out because they already know. She tries to explain Gordon asked about it while the other kitchen staff passes her the salmon burger. For some reason, Chef Ramsay had not tried the ravioli before the salmon burger reached the table. He did, however, say that the ravioli smelled weird. He tries the dish on uncertain if it will be sweet or spicy. He dramatically says it's one of the most confused raviolis he's ever tasted in his life. When Samy comes to check on Gordon, he asks if the ravioli is store-bought, which Samy confirms, forgetting he said the pasta was homemade earlier. He moves on to the salmon burger, hoping it would be edible. His verdict? Overcooked but suitable for Amy and Samy's 3 boys. He tells the server that the burger tastes like dry cat food. Hopefully she doesn't tell Samy and Amy that. It's time for the confrontation. Gordon starts off by saying the wait was long and there were a few problems with the food. Gordon tells Amy that he's going to come back for dinner service later, see how the kitchen functions, then they can discuss the issues. On the way out, Gordon gives the server some money, telling her that the tip is just for her. Samy watches the interaction closely. As she accepts the money, she looks at Amy, who has smoke coming from her ears, knowing that the tip wasn't going in her and Samy's pockets. Chef Ramsay is in the kitchen. Amy tells him that she is the only one who makes the pizza and that she has had people tell her that it is the best they have ever had in their life. The same can't be said for the most confused ravioli Gordon has ever seen. Chef Ramsay asks Amy how she makes her dough. She tells him it's a secret recipe and again says that a lot of people tell her it's the best pizza they ever had. He asks her when was the last time she took criticism. She recalls a lady who ordered a Caesar salad the other day who did not like the croutons on her salad. Amy says that they are on the menu and if they don't like it, they can have it without it. Then adds,
Simple.
Amy says she can take criticism, but only the constructive kind, and that Gordon is just saying things that don't make sense. Gordon says that the pizza he had today was raw, and asks why Samy is too frightened to tell her when there is an issue during service.
That man isn't scared of you, he's not scared of anybody.
Amy says that Samy does tell her when there are complaints, but they just don't have many. Gordon says that if he were in her position, he would have been checking her plates when they came back to make sure everything was edible. Amy tells him that she was trying to get feedback, but no one would give it to her, meaning Samy was avoiding upsetting her while she was cooking. Gordon tells her that she doesn't want the criticism because she doesn't want to change. Chef Ramsay goes into detail, telling Amy exactly what was wrong with his pizza today. The dough was undercooked and wet in the middle, and all the toppings were in the center of the wet dough, leaving the crust dry. Samy says he didn't want to make Amy nervous, so he didn't tell her about the wet dough. She asks if the wetness is from the cheese, and Gordon confirms it is not. Amy says she doesn't think his pizza was undercooked. She checked it when it came out of the oven, and it was crispy on the bottom and crunchy when she cut into it, but she didn't see it come back as a dissected pile of dough. He moves on to the beef burger, saying the bun was soggy as ever. He says the toppings on the burger didn't go well together and asks who came up with the idea. Of course Amy did, and she can't believe it would be the worst flavor combinations ever. Amy walks away saying she has never had a problem with the burger, ever. Gordon says it's because her husband doesn't tell her. He moves on to the salmon burger, which he describes as a dry fish cake in between a dry bun. She hears dry bun and combines the reviews of 2 different burgers when her automatic response is to ask if the bun was a soggy bun or a dry bun. Then says people tell her all the time that it's good like that. Gordon says there's no point in him telling her any more about her food when she keeps saying it's good like that. He moves on to the ravioli, asking if they are frozen and saying they would taste better if they were homemade. When he suggests taking them off the menu if she isn't going to make them fresh, she goes overboard, saying she should just take everything off the menu and close the restaurant. She says the frozen pasta is not crap and asks if he's tasted it. He said they were disgusting, and of course she says people love it and she's never had a problem with it. He asks her how she would know that when she never gets feedback on the dishes. She suggests real customers love it, unlike the haters. Gordon does some digging and finds the not-so-homemade gnocchi, no refrigeration required. When he asks Amy what's in them that they don't need to be refrigerated, she tells him to look on the back for the ingredients. He wasn't impressed with that answer. Amy explains that they make everything to order, so it takes time to put together because they don't have pre-made food. Gordon says, except the ravioli, to which she agrees. He reminds her that the eggplant is also pre-made, which she explains is so the breading doesn't fall off while cooking. Ramsay slyly remarks, and the gnocchi? Amy gets ready to say something smart by saying she wants him to understand something. He cuts her off, saying he doesn't understand her one bit. Gordon pokes the bear by going out to the dining room and letting everyone know that they are being deceived by the owners regarding the fresh pasta being frozen. He asks the diners if it would be alright for him to take it off the menu to save them from eating crap. They seem okay with the idea. Gordon tells Samy that he has too much respect for their customers to lie to them about passing the store-bought frozen pasta off as freshly homemade. He asks Samy if he is going to tell Amy or should he do it himself. Meanwhile, Amy's in the kitchen prepping her station with the ravioli. Samy says he will let her know. When he tells her no more ravioli, she starts naming off other things on the menu that she is taking off, such as the burgers, and that people can only have cakes tonight. Samy walks away saying okay, as if he knows that is the only way to deal with Amy's dramatics. Gordon asks Samy why Amy has a problem with criticism, to which Samy says to ask her why, because he has the same problem with her. Chef Ramsay is left speechless. Amy tells her which table the order is going to, then corrects herself a second later. The server asks Amy if she's sure, and the look on her face sets Amy off. She tells the server she doesn't need to question her and she can go home right now. Gordon isn't impressed with what he is seeing. The server apologizes and continues out the kitchen with the order. Amy follows her out front, telling Samy that the server has to leave because she's having an attitude. Poor girl's in the background saying no, 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 and trying to explain the confusion. Samy knows Amy is overreacting and tries to talk her out of the decision to send the server home. When Amy returns to the kitchen, Ramsay is more confused about her behavior than he was the sweet and spicy frozen ravioli.
What a little
Amy tells Gordon she's not going to talk to him because she needs to concentrate, then follows it up by saying there is no point in talking to him. Chef Ramsay notices that the food is coming back with most of it not eaten. He asks Amy if the servers tell her when they come back like this. She says she's not notified by staff every time someone doesn't lick their plate clean.
No one's licking that.
Amy says to ignore Ramsay. That is what she's doing, just ignoring everything that is happening right now. Gordon takes one of the plates full of food destined for the garbage up to Samy, asking why the kitchen doesn't know there is a problem with the food. Samy says they didn't like it and says he will bring it up after service. Ramsay tells Samy once again that the kitchen needs to know so they can make the changes for the next time they cook it. Gordon convinces Samy to show Amy the food that came back practically untouched, and she says,
This is all bullshit, so I don't care.
Gordon says he sees a pattern of food not being eaten and going in the trash without Amy being aware that it's happening. She says there's no point in her speaking, so she's just going to work instead. Ramsay notices the $10 tip on the check Samy is finishing up and asks him if he's going to share that with the waitresses. He says no because they make hourly. Gordon asks if the customer knew the tip was going to the owner and not the waitresses, if they would still be leaving a tip. He asks the closest table what they think about the fact that the owner keeps the tips they gave to their server. He gets the answer he was looking for. This doesn't go down well with Samy, who tries to come up with an excuse before Gordon cuts him off, starting this argument in front of some shocked customers.
No. Don't. With me.
Yeah, I will with you. Who the you think you are?
Gordon says he is fed up with Sammy's weaseling ways. Samy tells Ramsay not to talk to him in an aggressive tone, saying he himself is the gangster, not Ramsay. Chef Ramsay tells Samy to tell the customers the waitresses are going to get their tips. Samy tells the customers the waitresses do not get the tips. Samy tells Gordon not to mess with him because he will mess with Gordon, before heading into the kitchen asking Amy if all the food has left the kitchen for the evening. She says yes, they are closed. Gordon continues the conversation with Amy, asking how she expects to have good staff when they don't pay them the tips they deserve. She says her husband pays those girls a good wage of $9 or $10 an hour to do nothing, and that if they would do half of what Samy does, then they could have their tips. Gordon calls her deluded. While closing the kitchen, Amy tells the waitress, who she thought was giving her attitude, that she can go. She says okay and walks away. You can tell she was holding back tears as Amy chases after her, saying not to walk away from her when she is talking to her like the control freak she is. She then tells the girl that she no longer works there. The girl starts crying, which makes the vulture swoop in more by telling her not to cry, and acts like she has no idea why she would be behaving this way. Samy tries to smooth things over, but the waitress isn't having it, as she shouldn't. He then turns to Amy, asking her to calm down, that she is just a kid. Then he turns to the waitress, telling her not to worry. She turns around and tells Amy that she wasn't doing anything, to which Amy replies that she had an attitude with her all night. She announces that she quits, but Samy doesn't want her to go, unlike Amy, who is already saying goodbye. Amy had this to say about her after she left, not seeing the irony that she herself has the worst attitude in the building.
He's a poisonous little viper, and I don't allow people to have an attitude in my restaurant.
Gordon sits down with the couple to discuss the events of the evening. He tells them that he has good intentions, and Amy is already shaking her head, but assures him she is listening. Ramsay tells Amy that he noticed she can't take criticism, and of course, she says that's not an issue. Samy starts telling Amy not to cry, and she says she isn't going to cry and that no one lets her talk. Samy asks to talk, and then tells Amy that both he and Gordon listen to her. Gordon just sits there watching the two speak over each other. Gordon goes back to the fact that Amy isn't being told when food is coming back, mainly because she is avoiding the criticism, and that is why she thinks there is no issues with the food before that night. He brings up the pasta again, and Amy says the sauce is good, and her and Samy think the frozen ravioli is good too. When Gordon asks that they return tomorrow with an open mind, Amy says she doesn't make promises that she can't keep, but she's going to do everything within herself to try. The next day, Chef Ramsay gets an early start with a plan on how to to move forward. But when he arrives at the restaurant, he finds that the lovely couple has yet to arrive. He decides to talk to a couple former employees of the baking company to hear about their experiences working there. One of the tasks while working there wasn't part of the job description, so he thought.
He made me wash his car one day.
What?
She says when there were complaints for things such as raw salmon, the couple would tell them they didn't know how to eat food instead of cooking it longer.
That is insane.
We've returned to the ravioli. Amy says she didn't tell them they were homemade, to which Gordon corrects himself, saying it was actually Samy who told him that. He said either way, it's not fair to lie to customers like that because the ravioli isn't good. Gordon tells Amy that he is there to help but doesn't think she wants to take his advice. She says she does, but when he brings up his review of the burger, she says he didn't tell her what was wrong with it and that she kept asking him, but he didn't tell her specifics. He says he did tell her, but she refused to listen. She said that he told her the bun was dry and wet, so she didn't know what was actually wrong with it. When he tells her she's confused because he tried 2 burgers, she denied the misunderstanding, only hearing what she wants to hear. When Gordon brings up the way she spoke to the young server, she gets super defensive and tries to justify her actions by putting the blame on the girl's attitude rather than her own. Except she calls her that kid. She then says that she's not going to let anyone hold her hostage to get anything they want from them. Gordon tells Amy that she is over-dramatizing the way the girl spoke to her, asking her if she was sure where the order was going. Samy says they are going to forget about yesterday and start fresh if they plan to continue with the show. Gordon says this isn't about the show, it's about a restaurant in crisis and a delusional restaurant owner that can't take criticism. Ramsay tells them that he met with former staff, even naming them, and was told some horrible things such as how they treat the staff poorly, had them clean their car in the middle of service, and having 50 staff that went through there in the past 2 years. When she denies having 50 people come and go and asks for proof, Gordon calls her bitter. Samy tries to help Amy by saying the former staff is wrong about the number of people who attempted to work there, but instead makes it worse by saying there was actually over 100 people who have come and gone, as if shifting the blame to others. Amy doesn't thank Samy for helping her out with the stats. Gordon asks Samy to tell his wife the numbers, to which Samy says she already knows this. Amy loses her cool and decides it's time for a drink of water. She asks him if she's going to criticize her for drinking water too, then says she shouldn't have come here today and that she is going home.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
When she comes back to the table, she says that she is done because all they have been is attacked. Amy says Gordon insulted her all day yesterday and she held her tongue out of class. Gordon says he just told her the truth. Amy says she didn't tell him the truth by saying nasty things to him. Amy says that Gordon disrupted by talking to her and Samy throughout the night, and that's why she wasn't cooking at her best. When he asks who was disrupting her when she was cooking lunch for him, she says everybody, and of course Gordon points out that she is blaming everyone else again. Amy says she does her best to make sure their doors don't close because she can't find qualified people. Then suggests Gordon go get the fired waitress, the former kitchen employee he spoke to, and the waitress he tipped, and have them run the restaurant to see how they do. Gordon says they won't come in because they're scared of Amy and embarrassed by the way she treats them. Gordon says she's convinced herself that everything she cooks is perfect. Amy denies it and suggests he looks at all the online reviews. Gordon says to her, oh no, not the bullies on the internet again. She assures him they have wonderful reviews about the restaurant, ones she probably reads every night before bed to soothe her damaged ego. Amy tells Gordon he is attacking her restaurant and her life. He says he's pointing out the problems. Samy sits silently, daydreaming of the day right before meeting Amy in Vegas. They wake up Samy when Amy asks him if they can talk to Gordon about what they plan to discuss with him today. Samy says to let him finish saying what he has to say before they move on. Gordon asks Samy if he is going to tell his wife the truth about the problems he has with her being unable to take criticism. Amy says she is aware and fine with the fact that she can't handle anything other than praise. Gordon tells Amy that he thinks she is too far gone, so she suggests they end the show if he feels there is no hope. He says he can't help people who can't help themselves and refuse to accept any advice on how to become more functional in the kitchen. He tells them that it's not normal to go through over 50 staff, have so many items on the menu in such a small kitchen, or for the amount of animosity they've built up over time in the restaurant. Gordon says they have the right to run their business how they want, and he has the right to do the right thing, which in this case is to walk away from the restaurant.
Wow.
Once outside, Gordon talks to the camera, saying this is the first time in the show's history that he was not able to help a restaurant, blaming it on their inability to listen. He says in about a year they have managed to get the community mad at them and have gone through way too many employees. He says their biggest problem is themselves. He believes that any changes he would have made wouldn't have lasted long after his departure.